Our story begins on Naboo, as Obi-Wan Kenobi is speaking with Jedi Masters Mace Windu, Yoda, Plo Koon, and Ki-Adi-Mundi just outside of the Naboo funeral house. After the death of Qui-Gon, the responsibility to train Anakin fell right onto the shoulders of the young Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Obi-Wan was extremely unsure of how to approach this with the boy. He was barely a Jedi Knight on his own right, and now he was responsible for training the boy that the Jedi Council didn't even want to be trained in the first place. And so, while waiting here on Naboo while the council members prepared to depart Coruscant, and Qui-Gon's body was prepared, Obi-Wan allowed himself to meditate on what he thought might be the best path for him, and for Anakin to succeed. And after a very long, in-depth meditation with himself, Obi-Wan came to a promising conclusion. He could not train Anakin on Coruscant. It would never work. He was from a sandy planet, isolated from people, aside from his mother and a handful of friends. Bringing him to Coruscant, a planet of 1 trillion people, 10,000 Jedi, it could not be the best path for Anakin to succeed. And Obi-Wan realized something while meditating. Throughout his Jedi life, the moments where he felt most like himself often came when he was off of Coruscant. He sometimes struggled with the rigid structure of the Coruscant Temple, and he figured there was no way it would be right for Anakin either. So, Obi-Wan would lay all of this out to the Council Masters, and after a long talk, he would ask them a simple question. May he, as a Jedi Knight, request a mission away from Coruscant to train Anakin. The council members would hear this, and they would all think about it, telling Obi-Wan they need more time, but it is certainly a possibility. The group of Jedi would turn and head into the funeral area, where they found Chancellor Palpatine next to Qui-Gon's body, paying his respects. And from here, things would escalate quickly, as Obi-Wan would get his way. Anakin would be trained away from Coruscant, for his benefit, and hopefully, for the benefit of the future galaxy. Initially, after the funeral, Yoda had decided that Kenobi should be replaced by Windu as Anakin's master, and for a moment, Obi-Wan had accepted this. But after seeing Anakin's face when the idea was floated by him, Obi-Wan knew this was not the way. Anakin was his responsibility, and so Obi-Wan embraced this, telling Anakin that he will be his master after all. And soon, the two of them would take off to a planet selected personally by the Council. The lush forested planet of Osus, home to one of the earliest Jedi temples, one of the most peaceful planets in the entire galaxy. Anakin would be extremely happy upon arrival, as seeing this much green in one place was overwhelming. While living on Tatooine, Anakin had imagined what other planets might look like, but Coruscant and Osus exceeded all expectations. Obi-Wan would land the ship, and it would be next to the old, worn-down, rather small temple. This was where they would begin to live and train. It was time for their life together, as master and apprentice, to truly begin. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, another master and apprentice met in secret. Darth Sidious met with Dooku, and Sidious said he has learned of something extremely intriguing regarding the Jedi. They've stumbled upon a boy from Tatooine with immense power. Qui-Gon referred to him as the Chosen One, and he is being trained away from Coruscant. Sidious did not yet know where he was being trained, but they will soon find out. Dooku said they should focus on Anakin being a key member of their future plans, and Sidious smiled, saying he's already begun formulating a plan, and it started at Qui-Gon's funeral. But for now, they will let Kenobi teach the boy the Force, and in time, Skywalker will be theirs. And so, for years, Osus became a true home to Kenobi and Skywalker. Far from the never-ending noise and structure of Coruscant, the Forest planet offered stillness, open skies, and a feeling of peace that Anakin wasn't used to. But when they first arrived, the bond between master and apprentice was weak. Obi-Wan was still haunted by the death of Qui-Gon. On Coruscant, he would have had friends to talk to, masters to consult with, but here, he was alone. He couldn't burden Anakin with these thoughts of loss, so Kenobi tried to bury that pain under his own duties, holding tightly to the Jedi Code as his only way to keep himself grounded and focused. He trained Anakin with rigid schedules, constant corrections, expecting the boy to adapt to the same mold all Jedi were shaped by. It was foolish, and deep down, Obi-Wan knew it, but he was struggling. He didn't know what to do. He wasn't ready, but Anakin was grieving as well. He'd left everything familiar behind, most importantly, his mother. The harsh training, the emotional distance from Obi-Wan, made Anakin feel more alone than ever. He didn't get angry at Obi-Wan outwardly, but his frustrations simmered under the surface. He wasn't sure how to handle them. Some days, he just wouldn't speak. Other days, he would climb the hills alone, disappearing for hours, without telling Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan considered reporting the struggles to the Council, but something stopped him. He remembered that this was his idea. Anakin's struggles were his struggles. He knew it was time to try and adapt, so he began watching Anakin much more closely, not like a Jedi Master, but like a person, just like Qui-Gon did with him. He noticed how Anakin would talk softly to wounded animals. He would sketch the stars at night, pretending to know which one was Tatooine and which one was Coruscant. He would cry late at night sometimes, when he thought Obi-Wan wasn't listening, and Obi-Wan would realize Anakin is so very human. He had 10 years living as a human, not as a Jedi. He couldn't be trained as a regular Jedi. Again, Obi-Wan knew it. He just had to accept it. The turning point would come during a storm. A massive lightning strike would blast down right into the ship that the two of them brought here, knocking out power and communications. The worn-down temple's roof cracked into two, and Obi-Wan dove to protect Anakin from falling debris. His shoulder was injured as it was hit hard by the debris. Obi-Wan screamed in pain, crawling to a corner and patching himself up, and as the storm raged on, Anakin sat beside him, saying he can't lose someone else. Obi-Wan, delirious but aware of what was going on, reached for Anakin, saying that he promises he will not lose him. And after that night, things finally began to change. Obi-Wan began to speak more openly about Qui-Gon and about loss. He told Anakin about his flaws, compassion, the way he always followed the living Force. Anakin listened, absorbing all of this, as he did deeply admire Qui-Gon, despite only knowing him for those few days. But as Obi-Wan allowed himself to open up, the bond between the two of them would deepen. Obi-Wan stopped forcing tradition and started adapting his teachings. He let Anakin talk about himself. He gave him more choices. They trained together, but they ate together, talked by the fire, laughed when Anakin's force pushes would send creatures flying through the air. Mistakes were turned into learning experiences, not to be taken seriously. And over time, the line between Obi-Wan being a Jedi Master and an older brother would blur together. And from that place of trust, Anakin would grow much faster. Osus, unlike Coruscant, was so alive with the Force wherever you went. Anakin felt it more and more every day. When he meditated, the leaves would shake gently and float all around him. It was nice. He would begin to notice it, and Obi-Wan would notice it too. The planet responding to the boy. Animals came near him without fear. Some days, Obi-Wan watched from a distance, seeing the grass ripple outward from where Anakin stood, his presence radiating around. It was clear that Anakin wasn't just strong in the Force. He was truly a part of it, or it was a part of him. Either way, the bond between the planet and the boy helped to center Anakin so much. He was more patient, aware, and though his emotions could still surge wildly, Osus gave him space to feel them without shame. Obi-Wan encouraged him to find balance, not suppression, and over time, that was the goal for both of them. When the time came for Anakin to travel to Ilum and get his first lightsaber crystal, Obi-Wan went with him. The crystal caves were silent, cold, filled with echoes of Anakin's past. Obi-Wan waited at the entrance. As Anakin made his way through the maze of ice, the Force would test him with a choice. As he climbed a steep, jagged ridge, wind howling against his body, a hand in a black robe would appear from time to time, reaching out to help him. It would have made the climb easier to take it, but something in Anakin warned him against it, and every time he reached for the hand, he would slide all the way back down. So, each time the hand appeared, he began rejecting it, and he kept climbing alone. It was exhausting, but eventually he reached the top all by himself, finding a blue crystal waiting for him. He learned something deeper than just strength. He learned that not every offer of help is pure. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan sat quietly by a frozen wall, the Force drawing him into a vision of his own. He saw Qui-Gon standing before him, soon saying that Anakin will be tested in his life. The galaxy will test him. Darkness will call to him. But Obi-Wan has to be the difference. Their bond is key to keeping the boy safe. And when Obi-Wan came back to himself, he knew he had a responsibility greater than just teaching. He must truly care for Anakin. From here, the training would only continue to go on much more successfully, and by the end of the 5th year, the Jedi Council would arrive to check in. Yoda, Windu, and several others came to observe Anakin's progress and determine next phases of the training. But what they found would surprise them. Anakin was not the child they remembered and feared. He was confident, focused, calm in ways they'd never expected. His connection to the Force, undeniable. But even more striking was the connection between him and Obi-Wan. When Anakin spoke of the Force, he would speak of the wind on Osus, the stars, the way he could feel Obi-Wan's presence, even when they weren't in the same room. The Jedi took note of his power and the quiet peace in his eyes. Yoda saw something new in the boy. Windu, still cautious, but he was learning. He was accepting that Anakin might truly become a Jedi. None of them could deny the path that Obi-Wan had chosen was working. But elsewhere in the galaxy, Sidious was finally ready to begin making his own moves. He followed the Jedi all the way to Osus. He knew where they were, and soon, in the deepest levels of the Kamino cloning facilities, the Sith Lord was alone. The cloning tank here had something far more secret than any regular clone trooper. There was one pod glowing with a sickly green light, and inside of it floated the figure of a man long dead, Qui-Gon Jinn. The clone was flawless in appearance, and Sidious took the necessary material just before the body was burned on Naboo. The looks of the clone mirrored the Jedi Master, who was supposed to be Anakin's master. But this was no Jedi. It had no soul, no memories. It was a shell, empty, waiting for Sidious to enter its mind. And through the Force, Sidious would be able to command this clone. He watched as the figure was pulled from the tank and dressed in simple Jedi robes. Its eyes opened slowly. It walked as Qui-Gon would. Sidious was pleased. He would send the clone alone to Osus. And as the dark figure approached the planet, the Force began to stir. Deep in his sleep, Anakin was tossing and turning. In his dreams, he saw a man standing in the woods, a familiar man. Anakin jolted awake in his sleep, wondering if what he just saw could be true. And for the rest of the night, he couldn't sleep. He was distracted. He could feel something in the Force, something unnatural, yet eerily familiar, something he had to pursue. And so, the next year on Osus would not be like the others. On the surface, Anakin's training continued like it always had, but a distance began to grow between master and apprentice. Obi-Wan was teaching Anakin more about lightsaber forms, meditation that could last for days at a time, how to move through the Force with both strength and subtlety of the mind. Anakin was faster, sharper, nearly impossible to fight in a duel, and although Skywalker and Kenobi were always even in their training duels, Obi-Wan could feel the growing power. His connection to the Force was unmatched. When he meditated, the world around him still responded. Birds landed on his shoulders, wind curled gently around his hands. But something deeper was changing. His darker emotions no longer passed through him like waves. He began to push harder during training, sometimes until he collapsed. He practiced alone late into the night. He stopped sharing his thoughts with Obi-Wan the way he used to. The light behind his eyes was still there, but it flickered now, and Obi-Wan could see it. He said nothing, but he felt the shift in his bones, and this change was occurring because of someone Anakin was growing closer to. Once a month, Anakin would ask for some time alone. He would say he needed space to reflect, or to meditate in the wild. Obi-Wan allowed it at first without question. It was good for him to be alone. Osus was safe, home to some humanoid people, far out over the hills, and Anakin had earned real trust. But soon, something about these absences would linger in Obi-Wan's mind, as Anakin would come back more distant, seemingly every time, as if coming down from a dream, and slowly over time, Anakin's questions would change. He asked about the Jedi Council more often. He asked about why the Jedi never ventured further into the Outer Rim, why attachment was forbidden, why Qui-Gon had truly died. Obi-Wan answered what he could, but the doubt in Anakin's voice was growing, and he couldn't seem to ease it. He sensed a presence around Anakin during these times, like a storm just beyond the hills, but he couldn't figure it out. He again considered talking to the Council, but he knew that this was a trial for him as well. In truth, Anakin had found a new teacher, a master that told him he was different for a reason, that the Jedi feared him, and deep in the forests of Osus, Qui-Gon Jinn was alive, or at least a clone of him, though Anakin thought it had to be him. He said the Jedi had betrayed him. He said that Obi-Wan struck him and Maul down on Naboo to keep the truth buried. He said he'd survived through essence transfer, waiting for the one the Jedi feared the most, Anakin. He told Anakin that if he'd been trained on Coruscant, he would have seen what Qui-Gon saw. That's why he was brought here. He would have seen that the Jedi are not guardians of peace, that they're rising to power, bending the Republic to their will, and soon they will turn against anyone in their way. They will launch a crusade against the galaxy that only a few beings are capable of stopping. Their meetings would remain secret. Anakin never spoke of them. Qui-Gon said they must be careful. The Jedi could be watching. And over time, he told Anakin that his training was incomplete without this truth, that Obi-Wan was just a cog in the Jedi's machine. Anakin would begin to believe him as the months passed. He thought of his mother, still a slave. He thought of the Jedi's rigid rules, and in these moments, he wondered if Qui-Gon was right. Maybe he was the only one who truly saw what was happening. And one day, Qui-Gon said it was time to go, that they will find Anakin's mother, bring her to safety, and they can begin to save the galaxy before the Jedi take over. Qui-Gon said he would bring Anakin to his master, the man waiting in the shadows, to expose the Jedi. So, after a year of these meetings, Anakin left the temple earlier than usual. Obi-Wan pretended to be asleep, but today, he would follow Anakin through the woods. And finally, Obi-Wan would see him. In a clearing of shadowed trees was Qui-Gon Jinn. Anakin before him, nodding slowly as the two of them were preparing to leave. A ship was sitting ready, half covered by branches. The sight froze Obi-Wan in place. He couldn't believe it. How was this possible? For a long time, he didn't move, but then his hand reached to his belt, feeling his lightsaber. But he stopped himself, and instead felt for a tracking device. He decided he had to trust Anakin. Years of training and bonding would lead to this. And so, as the ship carrying Qui-Gon and Anakin rose, Obi-Wan threw the tracker onto it and ran back to his own ship. He quickly contacted the Council on Coruscant, telling them what is going on, and they need to stop it. The ship carrying Anakin and Obi-Wan would fly through hyperspace and eventually enter Coruscant, going into the industrial sector to an abandoned tall building. Anakin would get out of it first, eyes scanning through the shadows. Behind him, Qui-Gon Jinn, calm, silent, as if none of this was unusual. Waiting at the far end of the hangar were two figures, Dooku and Sidious. Together, they welcomed Anakin, saying that this is the group that can stop the Jedi. Dooku looked to the clone of his former Padawan with a rather strange feeling. This was his first time seeing it, and it was rather unsettling. Sidious, meanwhile, was fixated on Anakin, the key to everything. The Sith would speak of the Jedi, and they echoed what Qui-Gon told Anakin over these months. Qui-Gon stayed at Anakin's side, saying little, but Anakin began to feel wrong about this. His connection, his love for Obi-Wan was real. He was like a brother. And as Anakin sat in this room full of dark-side users, he began to feel truly guilty. Was this the right path? Could Obi-Wan truly be evil? And then, something else arrived. Two ships roared into the hangar from above. Obi-Wan had contacted the Jedi. They landed hard, and as their rams lowered, 3 Jedi stepped out of them. Obi-Wan had helped them track the Sith ship all the way here. Windu, Yoda, and Plo Koon were here. The hangar grew silent as the Jedi approached, and the Sith knew this was the turning point for the galaxy. Anakin Skywalker stood between 2 worlds, 2 choices, 3 Jedi walking towards him, and 2 Sith plus Qui-Gon waiting behind. And despite Anakin's presence hanging over everyone's head, the Jedi knew this was the chance to end the Sith. So, Yoda leapt towards Sidious without hesitation, green blade igniting as the Sith Lord countered with a strike of his red blade, lightning spraying out of his open hands. Yoda deflected the bolts, flipping over the Sith to strike at his back. Sidious spun, blocking the blow with his blade, launching a strike at Yoda's chest. The Jedi Master slid back, absorbing each strike before pushing forward again with a spinning slash aimed low, forcing Sidious to retreat. The two darted across the hangar as 2 more duels ignited next to them. Windu charged at Dooku, blades clashing with sharp strikes. Dooku was much more powerful in the dark side than Mace had expected, but Windu countered with aggressive heavy swings, forcing Dooku to shift into defense. Windu pushed forward, hammering down on Dooku again and again, but the Jedi Master spun out of reach, delivering a force push that sent Dooku skidding across the floor. The Count rose with fury, throwing a series of arcing 2-handed strikes, but Windu blocked each one, responding with a clean cut that sliced through Dooku's sleeve, leaving his left arm scorched. Dooku yelled in anger, using that pain to only power his attacks even more. Meanwhile, Plo Koon was fighting the clone of Qui-Gon, fighting hard, battering the clone's defenses with quick strikes. Qui-Gon wielded a red blade, only furthering Anakin's suspicions. Plo drove forward, locking their sabers together, searching for another opening. And amid the battle, Anakin was frozen, every strike echoing through his mind. Qui-Gon pleaded for trust, saying they can change the galaxy together. Anakin's hand hovered over his lightsaber, the force swirling around him, loud, unclear. And then, from the far side of the hangar, a new ship descended. Obi-Wan stepped out, followed by a woman Anakin hadn't seen in years. Shmi Skywalker looked at him, tears in her eyes. Anakin stared at her, finally remembering who he truly was. Obi-Wan reached for him, telling Anakin to remember the climb on Ilum, the false hands, the danger of easy answers. Do not trust the darkness. The Force focused inside of Anakin. He saw Qui-Gon's eyes, vacant, cold. He saw Sidious's darkness. He saw his mother radiating light, the same light she imposed onto Anakin so long ago. So, finally, Anakin moved, and Windu looked up in surprise as Anakin was pressing Dooku back, unleashing his own flurry of precise strikes. Together, the two of them overwhelmed the Sith Lord. Windu disarmed him with a clean upward slice, and Anakin struck once more, ending this fight. Above them, Yoda launched toward Sidious in a spinning attack, as Obi-Wan joined in behind the Dark Lord, distracting him so Yoda could quickly slash across the chest. Sidious stumbled. Yoda drove his saber through his heart. The Sith Lord collapsed, lifeless. Nearby, Plo Koon disarmed the Qui-Gon clone with a sweep of his blade, and together with Anakin and Obi-Wan, they struck down this clone impostor, severing the last thread of Sidious's control. The clone fell silently. Battles would end. Anakin at the center of all of it. He'd chosen the light, and as the Sith fell, Anakin felt the influence of Qui-Gon's clone and Sidious wash away, confirming to Anakin he made the right choice. 5 years later, Osus was home to a rebuilt Jedi temple. Anakin and Obi-Wan led it together as equals. Their bond had become something even more unshakable. Younglings trained under the open sky, learning how to listen to the Force in the life around them. Anakin and Obi-Wan focused on discipline, choice, balance, always guiding them back to the center. With them was Shmi Skywalker, the soul of the temple. She cared for the children, tended the gardens, gave the students a sense of family that many had never known. There were other people out here that were not Jedi, helping to take care of the area, building almost a small community. And among the students, one stood out. Ahsoka Tano grew quickly, and Anakin took special care with her training. Beyond Osus, the galaxy had changed. Padme Amidala was elected as Chancellor, leading with strength and compassion. Planets in the Outer Rim now had real voices in the Senate. The Separatist movement, no longer controlled by the Sith, was given the right to secede peacefully. New treaties were signed, trade routes balanced, war avoided through understanding. The Jedi supported from afar as peacekeepers and advisors. Temples were scattered throughout the galaxy, rebuilt once more, as the people trusted them again. For the first time in generations, the Republic was united. The Sith were gone. The Jedi would continue growing. And on Osus, as the sun rose over the hills, laughter and peace echoed from the temple halls. A peaceful future was truly here, led by Skywalker and Kenobi. And folks, that is our story for today. The first one I'm recording in a new apartment across the country from where I previously lived. Exciting stuff. And unfortunately, during the very long 16-hour drive, I got a cold. So you can probably hear it in my voice. I had to pause a few times just to be like, holy crap. But yeah, I really, this was a video I thought of while driving. I thought of a few of them because I had, not much else to do. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. Hope you guys like this one. It's kind of simple. Like, it's kind of simple to, like, what if Obi-Wan left the Jedi Order to train Anakin, but he stays in the Order and has to, like, kind of sort through training him while still being a Jedi. And I thought it was fun to kind of balance the trauma of Obi-Wan losing Qui-Gon with Anakin losing his mother. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one a lot. I hope you guys did as well. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.